Can we push our limits beyond the sky? With technology and humanity, we can go further together. Vodacom.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to everyone for joining us for another episode of the Loeries Creative Hour. And also welcome to our guests. Fahmeeda, Ku, Kenzie, if you'd like to turn on your cameras. Yay, there we go. Amazing. So let me introduce our guests for today so that they can say hello, and then I'll do the other ad break stuff in a little bit. So Khensani Nobanda, who's the Group Executive for Marketing and Corporate Affairs at Nedbank. Thank you for joining us, Kenzie. Kenzie has had a long and amazing career, taking her from everywhere from Unilever to Diageo, SAB, and Vodacom. Kenzie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello on the unmute. Thanks, Preetesh. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. And then we also have Fahmeeda Cassim-Surtee, who's the Group CEO at DStv Media Sales. Fahmeeda started up, I did not know, her career in journalism before rising to the ranks and spending over 2 decades at DStv to now be Group CEO of DStv Media Sales. Fahmeeda, thank you so much for being part of the chat.
Thank you, Preetesh, and thank you for letting everyone know that I'm a part of the furniture now.
They can't let you leave now. You've been there too long.
Too long.
Thank you, Fahmeeda. And then also Ku Govender, who's CEO of South Africa Dentsu International. And Ku also has spent some time at MultiChoice, DStv, Mnet, and at VWV. So Ku, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Preetesh. Really looking forward to the session and looking forward to the 2 amazing ladies being on the panel as well. And actually at MultiChoice was 22 years. So very close to Fahmeeda.
Okay, yeah, I didn't look at the numbers. I should have looked at those numbers as well. So, but also to everyone who's joining us from across Africa and the Middle East, so good to have you. Everyone who's going to be watching this later on demand, and to everyone who's on Facebook Live right now on the Loeries Facebook page. If you do want to share this and you can't get onto Zoom right now, remember, share the link to the Loeries Facebook page, and I can see everyone's joining and joining up really quickly. So please be part of the conversation. So if you do have any questions and you're on Zoom, please feel free to share. But if you're on Facebook, remember, we can't see it. So I've got Susie Bowling from the Loeries, who's behind the scenes, who'll just be checking up on the Facebook page and sharing details with us. Also, a huge thank you to Vodacom, who are our partners, who help connect the Loeries Creative Hour with the rest of the community and some more support our creative community to be able to be closer together and to achieve so much more. So thank you to Vodacom for bringing us together. But first, let's get into our chat and our conversation. And maybe Kenzie, starting with you. I mean, I've done a little bit of an introduction, but maybe if you want to share, I think everyone knows all 3 of you, but it's always useful, a little bit more of an introduction in terms of you and maybe just your personal leadership style.
Cool. All right. Personal leadership style. We got into that very quickly, Preetesh.
Straight in. This is going to be the shortest hour of your lives. I cannot believe how quickly this goes by. I need to get into the meat of this.
Cool. So, I mean, I think, as you said, I've worked in a couple of organizations. I've always been in marketing. I think this year is my 21st year being in marketing. So I've started my career at Unilever working on Rama margarine. And actually, one of the things I love about my career is that I've been able to work on margarine, on tea, on skincare products, on alcohol, selling Vodacom bundles. And now, obviously, I'm in banking. And as you know, banking is changing so much. So it feels much broader than just getting your bank account, right? Which is really exciting. I guess from a personal leadership style, I like to talk about I like to be managed. I like to manage people the way I want to be managed, which is basically says, let's you and I agree on what we want to achieve, and then give me the space to be able to go and achieve that. And that's what I do for people who actually work for me, is that, I'm generally a very sort of empowering leader. For me, it's about, let's agree on what we need to achieve, and then you go do what you need to do. If you need me, you bring me in. And bringing me in is not always even formal, on a WhatsApp, on a phone call. Any time of the day. I also, work sort of weird hours because I'm not a morning person. And then I guess also just from that perspective, I push my team a lot in that I've got very high expectations. I want to win. And if I feel like we're not winning, I'm really challenging in that sense. And then like a big value of mine is authenticity and truthfulness. So what you'll find is that my personal leadership style is I am off the cuff, honest, truthful. My agencies experience that, my team experiences that, my boss experiences that, my
I've
husband
experienced
experiences
it. I see
that.
as we chat.
Yeah, so I think it would be that. It's, just direct, authentic, very empowering. And maybe basically the last thing is like very impatient, because I always actually wanted to be open and truthful about all of that. So very impatient on results, very impatient on progress and speed, which sometimes obviously is not great. So I have to manage myself when it comes to that. But yeah, I would say that's like my personal leadership style.
Amazing. And we're going to get a lot more into that as well in the chat. But Fahmeeda, an introduction to you and your personal leadership style as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Preetesh. I'm sure that, with the other two great ladies on this panel, I'm sure we're going to share a lot of common leadership styles. So, but maybe if I can just start a little bit more about myself. I obviously didn't just land in a job being the group CEO for DStv Media Sales. I did all my hard yards before I got here. I started off as a journalist for City Press newspaper. I was very, very, I'm very honored to say I was really a part of telling the stories post-isolation period for South Africa in sport. So my history, goes back to a period where the National Sports Congress was being set up, where there were less opportunities for people of color in sport, and now the opportunities were starting to open up. So I have a lot of history and a lot of legacy, working in that sort of world. And the reason I'm also telling the story is that I did experience a lot of adversity also being a sports journalist and being a female, because that's helped me develop my personal leadership style and why I'm so passionate about empowering women. So I'm sure that most people know that at least 90% of my ExCo team is actually female, not because I specifically, went out and said I want a female, but because I encourage women to give them this kind of space to be able to just be, to be able to say, you know what, it's okay if you fail. The men fail all the time too. So don't be afraid of that. You can actually, so I encourage women to actually become part of in big leadership jobs, which I think has probably been the reason for my success personally and also for their success. So my personal leadership style is really about enabling people. I always find that if I give people the right kind of motivation, I know they can get there. So I'm a little bit like the teacher who gives the A first. And now it's up to you to be able to deliver, if that makes any sense. So because I faced a lot of adversity being a female involved in sport, I guess that was really the things that were the building blocks for me to be able to say, I don't want people to go through the same kind of pain that I went through. And I actually want to assist other women to be able to get there. So I don't pay lip service to this at all. It's something that I'm known for. I'm passionate about it. And you can see it just in terms of my team setup, and the company that we operate, which is a very successful business as well, run by women. So that's fantastic news. In terms of more of my personal leadership style, I would say, quite similarly to what Khensani said, I'm also very goal-driven. I think I've got a competitive streak. We are in an industry where one has to track what happens with other media players, etc. But I don't do it in a way that's awful. Make it fun. I would say that my leadership style is more incentive-based. So it's more about, let's get there together. Let's set up this vision together. Let's sort of do that together. And it's the same style that we deploy to the external marketplace. So both Ku and Khensani are leaders in our marketplace. And it's how our business wants to be seen by them. We want to be partners to brands like Nedbank, to any of the brands that dentsu Aegis represents, etc. We never ever wanted to be we never want it to be something that's not authentic, you know. So I would say that in my leadership style, this authenticity thing is extremely important, building trust amongst your peers, your clients, your customers, etc. But most importantly is also building trust with the individuals that work with you, because they're the ones that take your messages out of the marketplace. They're the ones that represent you, your brand, your business, etc. So I hope that, I know it was a little bit all over in the answer, but it was just part of the conversation. Sorry.
No, I think that's great. That reminds me to my computer, anyone who's ever done computer programming, I think I'll sum it up. There's a term in computer programming that goes WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. So it's pure open and honesty, and that's it. So I guess that's how I'd sum it up. Thanks for that, Fahmeeda.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Fahmeeda, I'm sorry, cool. On your side, so tell us a little bit more about yourself and as well as your leadership style with your team.
Sure. So I studied accounting, but I had a passion for marketing, and I got into marketing by default. Coming from an Indian home, you know, that your parents want you to be a lawyer, doctor, or teacher. There's nothing about marketing in this because they never thought that was a successful job. So born and raised in KZN, and then I came up to Johannesburg 30 years ago, and I found myself a job at Mnet as a production assistant, but had a real passion for marketing. And if I looked at my years during Mnet, you know, I just climbed up that corporate ladder to become the marketing director of Mnet as well. But in terms of that qualities, I think the one thing that I need to be vulnerable on the call with is my lack of confidence. And I think the lack of confidence was the fear of failure. And that's what I realized during my career, is that I needed the persistence and the tenacity to move forward with regards to where you want to be as a woman, because lack of confidence is real to women leaders. And I think that's one of our barriers to success as well. Now being at dentsu as the CEO, I call myself a Chief Empowerment Officer, because I believe in empowerment of others. And I believe that leadership is not a solo act. Leadership is with a lot of people. You've got, as a leader, you've got to inspire and motivate. And I loved what Khensani and Fahmeeda said, was these two things really resonate with me, is with authenticity and transparency. That's really important. And I think that's what takes you through mastery leadership as well. And in leadership, you need to understand your strengths. You need to challenge yourself and your team leaders to their greatness. You need to unleash potential with your team members, but also being fair. And also there's times where there's a fairness in corrective measures, but saying it in a constructive way and not in a destructive way, to build other people up and not to break other people down. So in short, that's my leadership style.
Amazing, amazing. You know, we have a lot of young people. So I'm going to move on to the section. We have a lot of young people who are in our industry as brand communications, and we were all there at one point as well. So I always go, was there a moment, and maybe Khensani, you and Kenzie, you're going to take this over, was there a point when you realized that you went from this phase of I'm new, I'm learning the ropes, to realizing that I'm a leader, I have the ability to exert leadership traits in the work that I'm doing? Was that a conscious point that had happened, or was that something that where you look back and went, that was a defining moment in my life where I realized that was when I could truly call myself a leader in this role?
Sure, what a great question, Preetesh. And I think it was probably a bit of both, right? So in my career, I was incredibly fortunate that the marketing director of Unilever South Africa at that time, Unilever Foods, Kees Kruithof, was a massive champion of mine. So I guess when I started working and just coming from university and coming from high school, I've always generally been in leadership positions, right? I was captain of the athletics team. I was captain of the house team, you know, like I was house captain. So I've just generally, at varsity, I ended up being at Ray's, like chairperson of the house com. I've generally been in leadership positions. I guess it's something just inherent in me. But coming into work, if I think about when I started working at Unilever, so, I mean, Litepu Machaba was actually my first boss at that time. And she used to say she thought she was getting an assistant brand manager and she got a daughter. So that I was literally childish. Like I was completely immature, straight from varsity. But there were people who saw something in me, because I guess inherently I had it. So Litepu definitely was one of them, but Case, I think, played a big role because when I left, so I became brand manager, I was ABM, and then I became brand manager on Rama. I stayed for like 8 months and I went to Diageo to work on Smirnoff Vodka as the brand manager. And whilst I was at Smirnoff, like as a 25-year-old, I got like this incredible phone call from Case, and I mean, he's Dutch, right? So he says, Khensani, I'm standing on the balcony of your apartment in Umhlanga. I'm living in Cape Town at that time. I'm like, my apartment in Umhlanga? Like, what are you talking about? He says, I want you to come back to Unilever to run the tea category for us as category director. I was 25 years old. I literally was like, is this guy insane? Like, it actually just didn't land like that well with me. So in a way, I was thrust into quite a big leadership position at a very, very young age. And in fact, within my team had people who'd had more years of experience. In fact, one of my team members, when I started at Unilever, was what they called your buddy, like the person who introduces you to everything. And all of a sudden they were reporting to me. So in being thrust into that leadership role, I had to grow. And in growing, part of it was, as I say, inherently in me, but also just being able to take feedback. It was very difficult for me. And I'll give you just a simple example. I'm the type of personality who impacts like the energy of a room, right? So if I'm in a good mood, the energy of the room is generally good. If I'm in a bad mood, the energy of the room is bad. Now here I am managing people, and I'm this 25-year-old idiot who sulks in meetings, who just, when they're angry, doesn't understand that, some people take a bit of time to understand things. And it actually used to impact my team. And I found that, one, I didn't have the support of my team. Two, we weren't achieving what we needed to achieve. And then my boss at that time, another Dutch guy, Harm Goossens, said, he actually gave me the feedback and he said, you actually need to watch your energy, because here's what happens with your energy. And initially, as a 25-year-old, I was like, I don't have to listen to this guy. Like, what does he know? I know, look at me, I'm a category director. What does he know, But I, for some reason, just thought, let me listen to what he's saying. And then I started like testing it out and I realized, oh my God, he's right. So actually, Preetesh, was, like I say, a combination of two things. I think I've inherently always had it in me. I was lucky and very fortunate that I had a guy like Case who said, I think she's fantastic, let's, promote her. And then had also the fortune of having a boss who, when I then got promoted, who wanted me to win and gave me the right support, feedback, coaching, guidance to be able to win. Yeah, or succeed. Yeah.
Amazing. And for me, I mean, listening to Kenzie's story about, being young and making mistakes. And I think the interesting thing is the industry knows all three of you now at this point of just immense success and just amazing reputations. But I mean, what was it like when you were young, joined the industry, and you said you started off in journalism and then making the transition out of journalism? I mean, as a young person, did you always exude the confidence that we know today, or was there a different Fahmeeda back then that we didn't know?
Yeah, I would say also similar to Khensani. I think that if I look at my school journey as well, I always had leadership roles in school. I ran our school newspaper, so I always had like sort of a flair and a passion for writing. And I think that, I know it's a little bit unfair to say, but I do think that there are some kids that have got leadership traits. And, you can see them in overall classrooms. They're the ones who are not afraid to speak their minds. I would say that I've always had a fearless streak in me. So, and the reason I have that is that I think I've learned this thing a long time ago, is that someone once said to me that, if you stab me and you stab somebody else, the blood's the same, it's red, there's no blue blood coming out of there. So there's no reason to be afraid of a fellow human being, so that's my thing, is that I'm actually fearless. Like, I don't care if the person is the managing director of this or whatever. It's not going to change how I'm going to be to that person. If the person is the tea lady, it's not going to change how I'm going to be to that person. It's going to be completely, they're going to experience the same me. I don't have to be different, to somebody who sits in a hierarchy structure to someone who's that. I'm nice to everybody. And that's and I choose to be that way. I choose to wake up being nice to people. I don't want to be, and as Khensani said, she talks about this thing called energy. It's a very, very important thing. And I believe it completely. I mean, I'm running a media sales business. If I had looked like this, or if I had bad energy levels, what would our clients think? What would people who touch our business think? They would go like, oh my God, those people are not having a good time. Like, so one of my key things is to always be seen having a good time. Even that there are pressures, that there are challenges, so just put on a face. I once was fortunate to attend a Harvard program where one of the lecturers was the very famous Amy Cuddy, who talks a little bit about posture and all those things. I didn't even realize it, but I actually do that naturally. Is that you can actually choose happiness, and if you smile, I promise you'll feel better. And she teaches, she teaches this to Harvard graduates. So it's such a common sense thing, but you can lift the energy in a room by just being a positive person, by just being somebody who is doing the smiling, by just being nice. Just be a generally nice human being, and nice stuff will happen to you. I know it sounds simple, but I promise you it is. It's absolutely simple. Like, just be a nice human being. Nice stuff will happen to you. Always treat yourself as how you would like to be treated. I think I'm very sensitive to people's emotions. And I think I'm a sensitive person too. If somebody hurt my feelings, it would bother me, it would completely bother me. Why did that person say that? What was the reason? I would try and play the outcome in my head, etc. So I try not to ever do that to somebody, so if I've unintentionally hurt someone, I always go back to them saying, look, I said this, but maybe your perception of that was wrong. So very, very quick to apologize for what I would call bad behavior on my part. So I think it's a very important leadership thing too. It's basically growing your EQ and sort of coming out of that. I don't know, Ku, if you agree, but just be happy and positive. Ku is a very positive person too. Yeah.
Well, you can party with Fahmeeda. She is happy all the time.
Yeah, it's the truth.
She's my happiness bunny. She is my happiness bunny.
Yeah. What was Ku like when Ku started off her career as a young person, straight out of accounting into marketing?
So I wasn't as confident as Khensani and Fahmeeda. I think I was also the chairperson of a youth club and the debate team, but I'm my worst critic. And I think that's the one thing to the youth out there is don't be your worst critic. And I always felt I wasn't good enough, and I needed to do better and better. So I became my worst critic and constantly pulled myself down in a way. And as I said before, I was so afraid of failure. And weirdly enough, so when I first started, I actually approached a female mentor and I said, please, can you help mentor me? And she refused. She said, no, I don't believe in women empowerment. And she didn't mentor me. And I went to a male to mentor me. And that's why I'm so passionate about female empowerment. And I hate the word PhD, pull her down syndrome, because I think it's so important that we all have a sisterhood and promote one another and celebrate one another as well. So for me, being a young person, and if I can offer some valuable advice, is having your roadmap of where you want to be. And with that roadmap is that final destination. Where do you see yourself? And also have enablers like mentors or coaches to take you there. If I didn't have I call them my enablers. If I didn't have mentors and coaches at that stage, I wouldn't be where I am today, because they pushed me to my limits to actually unleash my potential as well.
Amazing. And I mean, it seems, again, everyone has these strong leadership traits that started in young, even if you feel you're maybe a bit more introverted in your way you're actually doing it, but everyone seems to have these leadership traits. So when we look at it today, and when we're looking at people, and you look at young people coming to your organization, or just young people in general in our industry, Kenzie, when you look at this, do you think leadership is something that you're born with, or is this something you can actually learn? And I know this is it's a question that's been asked many, many times, but I'd love to get, just the feedback from all three of you in terms of that. Is this something you're born with, or is this something you really can develop?
I think you can develop it, and I've seen people develop it. So I think there's lucky people who are born with it. And actually, although they're lucky, it can also be unlucky because they potentially don't go through some like difficult experiences of learning how to master that leadership that you've got. So as you know, as Ku says, she's had to come from a level of building her confidence, which is why I can tell you now her experiences have been richer for and her team is like are richer for her own experiences. And I think sometimes if you think, well, I'm born with it, or maybe she's born with it, you lose out on some really, I think, useful experiences along the way that you can use to manage your team and stuff. And actually sometimes can be arrogant in that. And I mean, I think the arrogance, that's why I said, like, I really think I was lucky that I had Harm who said to me, you need to manage yourself. Because if he had never said that to me, I'm not sure I would have been a better leader. But I definitely think even if you're not, you can definitely develop it and grow it along the way. And I've seen it. And I do think, and this is my own biases, right? So I tend to connect well with extroverts just because of that's my personality. And people tend to think good leaders are extroverts, and it's not true. I've seen, so if you look at my leadership team now, so my marketing leadership team, Tabi Singh, who heads up, who's the executive head of group marketing, is not an extrovert, but she is one of the best leaders I've seen. I mean, the way she manages my group marketing team, I think is second to none. So I guess even on style, leadership styles, like you can't just look at the one person and say, oh, that's the person who's like, rah, rah, let's go. Rah, rah. There's some people who lead in very different ways. And I think we need to appreciate what those ways look like. For me, as long as someone raises their hand and says, I actually want to lead people, I want to drive visions, I want to build brands, I want to, as long as they, let's see how we can work with what you've got to be able to help you do that.
Khensani, I love what you're saying. Sorry, I love what you're saying about the arrogance part, because as leaders, I will never forget where I came from. So I think as leaders, it's so important to have humility. You could be the most high-performing leader, but humility is such an important thing. And I love that.
Fahmeeda, do you?
No, definitely. I think it's I think all these women know what we have to go through in terms of managing stakeholders at the top, managing people that work for you, keeping a happy, motivated space. And this thing that Ku mentions, just about getting down to that level of saying, I can be humble, I can learn new things. I'm also, I think we should be okay with saying that we don't know everything. And there will be somebody with and that's my big thing also, is that, when you reach a stage where you are always the cleverest person in the room, it's not a good place to be, because it means that you're not being challenged. There's nothing that you're learning. You've got to bring in talent into your business that also shifts that, a little bit. And that's an important leadership lesson, is that apart from being humble and being prepared to take a step back and go, you know what, I actually don't know everything here, but somebody else will know more than me. And let's all just learn from that somebody else. I think that's a very, very big thing. And Preetesh, I have to say this, and I'll say this, sort of fearlessly, is that I think women are better at this. I think that we are better at being able to say, look, I didn't understand that. Please, can you repeat that again? Please, can we look at this again? We are okay with it. We are okay with it because we built ourselves from the ground up. We were not handed something. It's just like we are absolutely okay with not knowing everything, because we also have, ingrained in all of us, we are nurturers just by nature. So we completely understand when somebody's trying to put forward a new idea, we give them the credit, we enable them. I think we're better. I have to say, I think we're better.
Fahmeeda, I actually have to come in, sorry, quickly, because I completely agree with you. And one of the things I've been saying to my team, or if anyone, chats to me, is this, in the last year, because of COVID and all of that, these things that as women generally are recognized as weaknesses have actually been shown to be superpowers.
Yeah.
Empathy, right? Like, so generally it's been, well, you can't be empathetic, you must be tough on people, blah, blah, blah. Actually, what COVID showed us was that empathy is a superpower, because bloody hell, we had to get our teams through such a very difficult time. So I'm absolutely with you. I think instead of modeling our leadership as women on men, we should actually use our innateness of what being a woman is, and pick a couple of, like there's a couple of things I love about men, like negotiation, when it comes to money, blah, 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 you pick those things up. But I think innately a lot of what it is that's being female, I think is powerful in leadership. And for me, a lot of it has shown that, they're actually superpowers.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Ku and I were having a little chat prior to this, and I said, one of the things I wanted to stay away, specifically going, hey, look, these are great women leaders, because the truth is, take the word woman out of it, you're just great leaders. But maybe, so this is the interesting thing. So Ku, maybe following on from those chats, I mean, is this maybe where one of the things where, as I said, we wanted to focus on just leadership itself and be gender agnostic, but maybe is it one of those things where we actually now have to look at it and recognize that women bring something to the table that maybe male leadership hasn't in the past? There's really a value in a business setting for the future of business in the world we're going into right now.
Absolutely. So you speak, I think the three of us are so passionate about women empowerment. So I think it will definitely skew to women. For me, I think for us as women, we've got to celebrate being a female. And I love what Khensani said. We cannot emulate to be a man in a boardroom table. That's just not it. It's about you as a woman. How do you articulate your story? How do you articulate yourself in a boardroom table to have buy-in from the others? So that's where it comes with the authenticity as well of being a woman leader. Because, and I love what Khensani said. Khensani is, sometimes we're so apologetic even to ask for a salary increase. We're apologizing, please, may I have an increase? So those things, I think our confidence, and Fahmeeda touched on it as well, we need to learn from men. I don't think we should alienate men leaders. We should learn from men with regards to their strengths. When they're in a negotiation, they are tough negotiators. They don't apologize for a salary increase. I don't know why us as women, we take that step back with we proving our worth. And I think that the one thing that happened in my journey as well, I constantly, maybe it was my lack of confidence, but I worked so hard, but I had to constantly prove myself as a woman leader that I'm actually really good. But men don't do it. And I think that's what we can learn from men as well. And not to be, and I say this in a lot of my talks, and I don't want to be sexist in any way, men fake it till they make it.
I think we've seen that, right? I mean, in reality, you're absolutely right. I think there's different groups of individuals who can absolutely have the benefit of faking it until they absolutely make it. But one of the things that's also a challenge, I'm sure, and maybe for me to take this out is, I mean, there's a label, as I mentioned, that she's a great woman leader, but not really. Why does the word woman need to be in it? Why does it not just say she's just a great and an amazing leader? Why is it that when it comes down to women, and I mean this honestly, I've chatted to a lot of people and I've seen this, there's always the gender that comes in. No one says, hey, he's a great, you think about it, you've never had anyone say, he's a great male leader. He's a great leader. But when it comes to women, the gender is always placed before the word leader.
Absolutely. And the other thing the other thing that really annoys me, if a woman is assertive, oh my God, she's a great leader, but she's a bit bitchy, or she's a bit of that. So when a man is assertive, wow, he's a really strong leader. So I find that really annoying on how they compare us. Or if we're too confident, then they go, oh, she's a bit arrogant. And they never say that to a man, right?
I think these are things that are just linked, Preetesh, just to try and answer that a little bit. Yeah. That it is a phenomena for women to be in leadership, only because in understanding societal norms, in understanding where a woman's responsibility where her key responsibilities are. We still are the nurturers of our homes. We just, I mean, possibly for the three of us on this call, we're probably just doing it differently, but we're still making sure people are fed at home and things are going on. Trust me, it's still going to happen. It doesn't mean that that responsibility goes away. Yeah, you still got to make sure that the food is organized. Or if the husband says he's cooking or whatever, you still have to organize the ingredients. Trust me, women still take on that role. We still take on the nurturing role. Otherwise, you know, I think I think it's ingrained in us. And Preetesh, and that's the reason people would say, wow, she's a phenomenal woman leader, because there's so little of them, you know, and I think there's a big drive globally. And the timing is now. The timing is now to enable people, to enable women, to encourage them, to give people confidence, to say that, look here, this leadership thing, this is something that you can wax. You got to learn a few things, be prepared to put in the hard yards, do the important reading. I would say, you know, these are the things that actually will build you as a leader. So don't be afraid, because being a leader just means being prepared to learn something new all the time, because you can't just end up in redundancy. I think both Ku and Khensani will definitely agree with me when we say that we've constantly got to be improving ourselves, improving how we view the world, learning things about technology, learning things about anything that impacts our industries, etc. So the constant learning also just makes you a good leader.
Amazing.
The leadership journey is a constant evolving journey, because you cannot be complacent. And leadership for me is, I want to get the best people as a leader. I want to learn from other people. So and Fahmeeda mentioned this earlier as well. Someone once told me, as a leader, get more intelligent people than you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. I want to take I want to read a few comments quickly. So Giovanna Harker says, try many things, keep what works. A memorable piece of advice given to me by my fearless female leader over the course of my career. Lulama Intentessa says, I remember Khensani when she headed up the tea category at Unilever. I remember her bubbly energy. I was a design student at DUT. And we had been bussed in for some design thing. We were so young, excited, and Khensani made it an awesome experience. We were so happy when we got a stipend for our involvement too. So Khensani, I mean, I guess, how important is it, to, you know, as a leader, rather than just being the person who's delivering the results and getting the business the way it has to be, to truly be a role model as a leader within society?
Sure, it's very important. So, I mean, you were talking about this whole thing of people saying female leaders, but I'll tell you what it is, Preetesh. So when I was growing up, and so I'm South African, but my dad was in the MK. So we grew up in a couple of, you know, other countries, and I did most of my schooling in Swaziland. But you can imagine, when I was growing up, it's not like I looked up and there were these Black women who were in CEO jobs or CMO jobs. I didn't have those type of role models. And even as I started, you know, so getting into varsity in South Africa now, you know, that wasn't there. So for me, and I always feel like so one of my purpose in terms of my job is to make sure that I grow Black female talent in our industry. And I say Black female talent quite specifically because I do know that I didn't have that when I grew up. I want like young Black girls, like I want my niece Zoe to be able to look at not just Beyonce, right? She must say, oh, there's a Beyonce, there's a Kensi, there's a Thuli Madonsela, there's an array of Black women who, depending on what I want to be, depending on what traits that they, you know, display, I can be that myself. So I think for me, it's very important. So even in my role as a leader within the industry, I tend to give my time, one, to a lot of industry conversations, because I want to make sure that those industry conversations, there's a diversity in voices, so that other people are looking and going, I see myself in that person. I tend to give my time to especially Black women in terms of mentorship. My goodness, cool. I can't believe there was a woman who said to you, like, I cannot actually imagine that. I give my time I prioritize it actually, and some, because I really feel like, it's important. But then also my biggest thing is the authenticity piece. I want young people in this industry to understand that you can make it being who you are. You don't have to be a particular. I work in a bank, guys, and I swear half the time, and I'm pretty relaxed. I mean, you saw, Preetesh, the conversation between my boss and I myself, I told my boss, like when we were chatting with Preetesh, that as marketeers, we know consumers better than chartered accountants, which is what he is, right? So that's who I am. And I want people to understand that you will do well if you are yourself. Because, by the way, in my career, I have found that every time I have tried to be inauthentic or tried to be something that's not me, I've not done well. And every single time in an organization where I have fully brought myself to that business, I have actually done really well.
Khensani, that's such a, sorry, I have to touch on that because I'm so passionate about this.
Go for it.
That's such an important point of authenticity. But I think also as women, sometimes I find women so judgmental, and Fahmeeda will understand what I'm talking about, is that if you've not walked in the shoes of other women and their journeys, we shouldn't be judging. Because that's where authenticity also comes in. Because sometimes I find ourselves, even from an industry perspective, there's a little bit of pretense and falseness. And that authentic journey and also being vulnerable, because other women want to learn from you. If you fully on this pedestal in pretense mode, no one's going to learn from you. But if you're authentic and vulnerable, people want to walk in your journey. They want to learn from you. But also with that, if you've not walked in someone else's shoes, I don't think it's fair to judge that person as well. Whether you're a woman leader, male leader, whatever it is, I think that's a very important aspect to move forward in leadership as well.
So maybe taking on that question, Ku, I mean, do you think leaders, and regardless of gender, but do you think there are a lot of leaders who eventually, when they rise to that position of leadership and the spotlight's on them, they try and hide their struggle and their journey and their failings that they've had in the past in order to just focus on where they are right now? And I see Kenzie is nodding, so maybe I'll let Kenzie go first while you have a think about it.
Go.
Yeah, there's so much, pretense to it, as if they're all three of us here, like we say, our journeys have had some difficulties. It's not always been a straight line. So you can't now be at the top and act like, the genie just put you there and like you're this like fantastic person. You're actually not teaching your teams how to deal with some of the things you've dealt with, some of the things that you've gone through. I always speak about, I took a break from working for 6 months in 2011, and that was my last sort of year at Unilever when I was looking after the skin category for Africa, Middle East, and Turkey. I had a shitty boss, and I decided actually this was not for me. And at that time, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be in marketing. And I just decided I'm out. So I took a 6-month break from working. Now, if I don't tell people that story, and then they're here going through their own issues, and like, how are they ever going to know that it's fine to go through it? It's going to be okay. But experience what you go through the tough times. You will come out of it. At that time, I moved back. I was living in Dubai. I moved back to South Africa, and I said to my parents, "I'm moving home for like 6 months." Now think about that Kenzie in 2011 and the Kenzie who's now running marketing for Nedbank. It's like, it's the same person. She had to get through that instance for her to be this Kenzie. So like for me, it's important that you share that, as a leader, and stop acting like everything's perfect.
I think Kenzie, you give me a good idea. Sorry, Ku, I'll just jump in here quickly. I think the three of us should possibly write a memoir of all the lessons we've learned. We could just develop some kind of like a Bible or a book that says this, these are the practical things. Like Kenzie says, like, I mean, we've all worked in areas or with bosses or with customers or with people that have been difficult and that have made your journey really hard. And what did you really do at that time? What's your blueprint? What's your modus operandi at that time? Do you like Kenzie did, do you flight and go, okay, right, I'm out of here. I'll decide after 6 months, or do you stay in and you know, what's the right thing? Because I think a lot of people struggle with these choices when they're faced with difficulty. And yes, we have all, I can tell you, all of us. I mean, I know Koo quite well, so we share this anyway amongst each other, but we've had tough journeys.
Very, very tough. And I once read the saying, don't look at my successes. Look at my journey of failures where you can learn from. So for me, that was such a pivotal a lesson when I read that, because a lot of people, to Khensani's point, you look at people's successes, you don't look at their journey that they went through, where they experienced failures and disappointments. And I think that's where we all can learn from one another, is from other people's failures and disappointments without judging them as well.
I'm going to take another question before I get into trouble for not going through these, because I never get to them fast enough. So Crystal Falsman asks, first person who wants to answer this can jump in, see where this question resonates. She asks, hi there, I want to ask, as a female leader, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
I can maybe talk about the sports journalism days to say that the significant barrier for me was just that because it had no worth to it. It was basically, you can't be there. This is an all male zone. So I would say that it was significant for me. I wasn't in a big leadership role at that stage. I was just working for, working as a newspaper journalist. But it was important for me because it taught me how to toughen up, so I would say that was a significant barrier. And then through my career, I would say there were times where I had put my hand up for something and someone thought, are you really capable of that? So I have had that, and to deal with that is very difficult because you constantly have to be proving yourself, like, no, I can do this and I can do this. And I promise you, I remember sometimes working on things like pulling all-nighters to be able to get something sound through, just because I didn't want to fail on something like that. So those barriers had always come in people's perception of what that is. So I would say that they were significant for that moment in time. But once you get over that, you're fine.
Cool. Oh, yes, please. Yes,
yeah, but I also want to address it with the next question, right? Like, why are there so few?
That was your question, definitely. I was going to go, that question is definitely for Kenzie. Do you want to read it and then answer it?
So, okay, the question is, why is it in South Africa we have a shortage of women in the C-suite? Example, we have a few CMOs, despite marketing being full of women. It's weird, right? And obviously we've got few female CEOs. Actually, I think 96% of the JSE listed organizations have got male CEOs. So that, I don't think we've ever done an analysis on CMOs, but just knowing the industry and everyone who's there, generally there's very few of us. So I think firstly, part of it is our fault. And I'll tell you what I mean. I think part of it is we don't raise our hands, right? And say, this is what I want. And I'll give you, so I love to use my own examples, like in my career. So when I joined Nedbank, I joined in 2017, September. And just before I joined, the guy who was going to be my boss, Thulani Sibeko, resigned, right? And went to Standard Bank. And initially I was like, oh, so now I'm going to get a new boss. Like, oh man, this is going to be messy. And then I actually decided, no, actually I want Thulani's job. So before I started in Nedbank, I went to Mike and Mfunda, our COO, and I said, so I actually want Thulani's job. And my mom, when I told her, said, you haven't even started and you want a promotion? I said, well, and I said to my mom, the worst that can happen is they say no, right? And if they say no, I'm still joining Nedbank as executive head of group marketing. But if they say yes, I could be the new CMO of the bank, like bloody hell. And, so I joined in September, and in January, they told me that I was getting promoted. So I think the first thing, it maybe goes back to Koo's point on confidence. I think we need to be confident enough to say we can actually do it and be able to raise our hands, to say, this is what I want, and I want, to do it. I think the second thing comes with organizations. So it's a combination of both. I do think organizations tend to value a lot of male traits when it comes to leadership. And that's not okay, right? Because, and that we need to broaden the definition. And as I said, like a lot of what women bring to the table, I think are superpowers. So we need to broaden the definition when we judge people in terms of how they've led teams, what they've done. We really need to broaden the definition to say, actually, this person can be a leader. And then the last, in doing that, so similar to Fahmeeda, if you look at my team of marketing heads, my executive head of group marketing is a female, Ntabi saying. My executive head of retail and business banking is a female, Buli. My executive head of wealth is a female, Nancy. So we then also ourselves, we need to promote women, whether or not they feel like they're ready. Because women, we generally tend to like feel like we've got the potential, but we're not quite there yet. So as a woman, my role is to make sure as a leader that I tell you, you're ready. And if you're not ready, you'll be ready in the job. We'll see to finish and stuff. Yeah. So I think it's a combination.
I think it's also, I love what you said, Khensani. It's about, we kind of achieved, you, Fahmeeda, and I have achieved in gaining our seat around that boardroom table. I think it's so important that we pull out more seats for women around that boardroom table. We cannot be hogging the seats. And I think that's another mistake where other women make is they feel they've arrived and they don't want to pull out seats for other women. And I think that's also one of the barriers that, for women to be gaining more seats around the boardroom table, or for there to be more female CEOs and female CMOs. Even with, in my leadership team, we have a majority female leadership team. And I think you got to lead by example, and you got to walk the talk. You can't be looking at a scorecard and saying, oh, this is the tick box exercise. It's not a tick box exercise. You've got to walk the talk with empowering other women around you.
Amazing. I'm going to try and get to this question as well from Giovanna Harku. And this question probably should take an entire hour long, because this is an important topic in mental health. But Giovanna asks, what can employers do to live up to the yearning for safe spaces within the workplace? Often we encourage employees to share mental health issues, but there's often a disparity in knowing this information will be kept safely and not used to gaslight you for future opportunities. Trust issues with leadership. So and I think this really speaks to trusting your leadership in the organization. How can you share your challenges and know that this won't come back to haunt you in future?
It's a very big topic, Preetesh, because this is again, now they've got I know that companies are talking about this all the time, the psychological safety, right? Giving people this opportunity to be able to do that. I can only just say that it has to be about this authentic leadership style and this trust issue where people will feel safe, because you can only build that and you can only earn that when you display the right behaviors in your leadership style. Otherwise, people won't trust you. It will make it difficult for them to share what's going on in their lives. And it's a very sensitive space. I think Khensani touched on it by saying that, in order to get to this level of trust, you need this, your EQ to be extremely high in this instance. And your superpower of being, can certainly help you with this. I still also maintain that in gender stereotyping, that women can do this better. Providing a safe space for people, having an understanding of what's going on with them mentally. But yeah, I think it's this whole thing of psychological safety, a very, very important principle to put forward into companies.
And Fahmeeda, I think the other superpower that we as women have is vulnerability. So as people who work with us, who report into us, and even our agencies see us being more vulnerable, but still leading them, I think they realize that actually vulnerability is not a weakness. But I mean, funnily enough, we've just kicked off a process in my marketing organization through a lady called Nini Mulifa, and it's based on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one of the tenets of it is around building psychological safety. And actually, for me, it was interesting. So we've done a couple of surveys. We do surveys every sort of four months to understand how the team is feeling across the organization, not just in my cluster. And one of the things that was coming out, it's a decent score, but about 70-something% of people in my team say they feel like they can challenge the status quo, right? I want it to be 100%. So that's why we've gone on this journey to say, actually, how do we build psychological safety so that people feel like they can bring themselves? Because as much as I can sit here and talk about vulnerability and authenticity, a lot of people will look at me and go, well, you're already the leader. So it's easy for you to do that and say that, so how do we then make sure that we build that psychological safety for our teams?
Amazing. Our hour is actually up. So maybe very quickly before and I think we're going to keep going. And I love these chats. But before we end, I think there's lots of people looking for that one bit of advice, something that they could maybe take and do right now to really embrace the leadership position they're destined for, that leadership role they're destined for. So maybe, cool, what advice would you give to somebody? How do you actually find that center of leadership within yourself to be able to go out there and make a difference in our industry?
So I think, we've touched on a lot of things about, authenticity, being an inspirational leader. But I think if, my word of advice would be if you're aspiring to be a leader and your first attempt is unsuccessful with regards to asking for a promotion, asking for a leadership position, you should not take no for an answer. You should be persistent and continue to evolve yourself with regards to bettering yourself and push through those barriers to becoming a leader that you want to aspire to become.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Cool. Fahmeeda, advice from your side?
I don't know. There is no silver bullet. It's going to be hard work. So just keep yourself open to learning is all I would say. Just keep yourself open to learning.
Amazing. Thanks for that. Khensani, parting words and parting advice from your side.
Yeah, so again, to Fahmeeda's point, there's no silver bullet, but what I can say is ask for what you want and always have that mantra, what's the worst that can happen in asking for what you want? So I think that's, a really big thing for me. There was another one. You see now, my brain's going But it's probably around authenticity, to be honest. Like, I really do feel like, no, actually, I remember what it was. Raise your hand for the difficult projects, for the difficult jobs, and in fact, raise your hand for the things that are not part of your job even. So when I've got a culture journey that I'm going through in my cluster and I need a team of 4 people that I need to support me through that journey within the team, be one of the people who raises your hand, because I can tell you what happens. 1, I get to know you beyond your day-to-day job. 2, when I've now got a list of people and I'm thinking, who do I promote next into a new role? Who do you think I'm going to look at? So really raise your hands for stuff that goes beyond your day-to-day job so that you can start to display those leadership qualities.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Khensani Nobanda, co-governor, Fahmeeda Cassim-Surtee. Thank you so much for spending this last hour with us.
Ladies, you guys are amazing.
For all amazing leadership advice and sharing all of this with us. And also just a reminder to everyone who's tuned in, don't forget Loeries Creative Week tickets go on sale soon. Keep 20th to the 23rd of October free. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And we'd love for all of you to join us in Cape Town if you can. Kenzie, Ku, Fahmeeda, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you, ladies. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I have some questions. Some big questions. Can we hate less and share more love? Can we keep going until we cure every disease? Can we make sure nobody is left behind? Can we find the courage to go further than we have gone? Can we change our ways before it's too late? Can we push our limits beyond the sky? With technology and humanity, we can go further together. Vodacom.